Welcome back, everybody, for our second episode of the Financial Advisors Workshop here. And as we had mentioned before, we're doing interview and also industry updates. This is an interview episode, and we have a very interesting lady, Stacy Francis, who's the president and CEO of Francis Financial in New York City. Stacy, welcome to the Financial Advisor Workshop.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so excited. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you. And as we get to know a lot of different financial advisors across the country, there's so many uniquenesses, and we're going to hear a really unique story here from Stacy. Stacy works primarily with women and all different types of issues regarding women and their place in our lives, in our families, in our world. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about that, Stacy, to start with. So Francis Financial, tell us about the firm and then how you run your business.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. I feel like I have the best life ever. I'm really blessed. I started the firm 20 years ago when I was 27, and I had huge aspirations and huge dreams, and knock on wood, through a lot of effort and love and tears, I'll be honest too, we are here. So there's 17 of us. We have now, I think, 8 financial advisors. Everyone's certified a divorce financial analyst, or at least on the way to becoming a divorce financial analyst, as well as a CFP. A few of us are also grief recovery coaches, which is a little unique. And that body of work, really supporting people from the mental health and emotional issues, is very important, because our superpower is that we work with women going through divorce and after, and we are very, very intricately involved in the divorce, so much so that we will testify in court as expert witnesses, and we will model out the divorce settlement of where she's going to be 5, 10, 20 years, and make very powerful suggestions about what needs to happen to make sure she's financially secure. Then we work with her ongoing as a typical financial advising client, with both financial planning and wealth management. And the other group of individuals are dealing with significant loss, the loss of their partner, of their spouse. Mm-hmm. And she will reach out to us sometimes when he's passed away 3 days ago, mm-hmm. or it has been 3 years and she still feels very stuck and hasn't been able to really get a handle on her finances. So the people that work in our firm have just, I would say, the biggest hearts I've ever seen on the face of this planet, because so much of what we do, it's very complicated from a numbers perspective, and there's a million moving parts for all of these women who are going through very difficult times. But I would say the part of our work that is just as important is having the patience, the sympathy, I guess I don't want to say sympathy, I mean more so empathy, not having judgment, and just truly being there and showing up to help her wherever she is, and wherever she is that moment in that day, because we also find it changes talking to her from one day to the next of where she's at, because there's just so much coming at her.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. I mean, so give us some of what are some of the really big issues when you're dealing with divorce that you end up even testifying for, or just supporting your client?
Yeah, so we're actually working on 32 different matrimonial cases right now. We probably do more divorce work each year. We work on about 30 to 40 cases each year. And we've been doing it for now 2 decades. So we've seen hundreds of cases that we've been part of. Everything, Brian, from coming to us and having no grasp on what the assets are actually, not having a clear picture about what the spending is, often not knowing what her spouse makes from an income perspective. And part of that is just maybe she's not as involved in the finances, but we also see financial abuse where she has been shunned from having any knowledge about the finances on on purpose. And usually it is the controlling person's way of controlling their spouse, keeping them trapped in, what is a very unhealthy relationship. So we see from the very, I actually don't know how much we spend. And I asked one lady, okay, so do you fly? Because I feel like this tells so much. Do you fly economy, business class, or first class? And she said, no, we have our own private jet.
Oh boy.
So, it to that level of just the only thing I know though is the $100,000 that's in our joint account. I know nothing else. Right. So there's that perspective, but then there's also women who might know the assets, but it's a bigger question of, what is the amount of child support and spousal support that I need, or alternatively, if she's the breadwinner, I can afford to pay. What does that mean for the vacation home that I have in the Hamptons or the vacation home that I might have in Florida? Can the kids still go to private school? Do I need to go back to work? And I've been out of work 17 years. All those different questions. And then with the actual assets and liabilities, which assets should I be taking from that are the most tax efficient, that have the most growth potential, that fit my overall new risk tolerance, which might be very different than the risk tolerance you could have when you were married. So it's a plethora of pieces that they come to us with, and typically the cases that come to us are the ultra high net worth, more complex, RSUs, stock options, the division of those, private equity, commercial real estate, deferred compensation. Even we have clients that have been, spouses that are celebrities and song rights. A lot of really interesting work that we do there. And I love it because we're able to model out all these different settlement options to show her what is going to be best for her and the kids long term.
Yeah, very interesting.
It's really cool stuff, I'll tell you, Brian, and you never stop learning. There's not a day that doesn't go by where, because the legal law, the laws are changing, but then also it's such a fascinating area to work in.
It is hard to believe in this day and age that there are members of a spouse couple, either side, that wouldn't know any of the financials. It's quite surprising, isn't it?
It's not, and at least for me, but I come from a very different upbringing. I never expected to go into this field to become a financial advisor. I will say that I was kind of forced into it. And when I say that with love, because I watched my grandmother, who was a victim of financial abuse, but actually it was worse than that, Brian. Also, she was in domestic violence, and the domestic violence, my grandfather became so violent, even though he promised us that he stopped, that he murdered her. And Brian, I will tell you that changes who you are as a little girl, watching that and seeing someone you love so much have bruises and then lose them that way. It changes who you are as a person for the rest of your life. And it's what drove me to, number one, start a charity in her honor, which I started actually the year before I started Francis Financial. And also drove me to educate myself, because I realized that understanding money for women is not a nice to, it's a must. And for her, she shared the reason she stayed is that she felt financially trapped. She felt that she had no other options.
Right.
And we do see that a lot of the women who are thinking about a divorce, one of the biggest questions is, am I going to be okay financially? And it's not greed. It's the life and death. Am I going to be a bag lady? And we see the same thing when her spouse has passed away. The first question, understandably, what does that mean for me? If she has kids, what does that mean for me? And are we going to be okay? And we're very fortunate that some people will come to us and they will be okay. And we can create a beautiful portfolio and it's going to all work out, invest the life insurance money, get her, get that clarity. But a lot of the women who come to Savvy Ladies are not going to be okay. And we had over 2,500 women in need come to Savvy Ladies last year to work pro bono free of charge with one of our 200 CFP volunteers. And, a lot of those stories are, things are not going to be okay. And there's a lot that they need to do and a lot of support that they need. That's why Savvy Ladies exists. And we have 200 different workshops and seminars on the website for them of wherever they are in their finances. And then, of course, that helpline where they can, take those questions, those personal questions, and work one-on-one with a advisor free of charge.
So did you also start Savvy Ladies?
I founded Savvy Ladies when I was 26, and then I started Francis Financial when I was 27 to pay for it because I never realized, Brian, number one, how hard it is to run a nonprofit. But number two, our mission of empowering women, particularly women in need, is such a compelling, important mission. I just assumed that the fundraising would happen, that people would write us checks. And Brian, I was very naive. I think part of it is because I was very young and I never run a nonprofit. That's not the case. And you need about a decade of experience to show your impact, to show the thousands of women and how you've helped them and how you're really moving the needle in this area. Now it's beautiful. We have unbelievable donors, a fantastic board of over 22 professionals, a staff of 4, and we receive, hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants as well each year. But that's not something that happens overnight. And so I've run both throughout the years, and it's been a lot of work, but it's been phenomenal. And I will say Francis Financial has been instrumental because through Francis Financial, I've been able to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to Savvy Ladies so that the service that we can provide can be really amplified to, reach so many more women.
Fascinating. So Stacy, stepping back a little bit, you're originally from Michigan, right? Now
I'm a Midwesterner. Yeah.
We're in the cold Midwest right here in Chicago, so I know the territory. And so, how did you get into the financial business, and how did you get to New York? You start out as a financial advisor, or let's
so go. The first thing out of college was finance because, again, I learned very early on that I need to learn this stuff, or else I can end up like my grandmother. And where better to go learn about finance other than the Big Apple?
Yeah.
And what better a job than an investment banker, because they know everything about finance. Yeah. So I started as an investment banker at a company called Donaldson, Lufkin & Jenrette, which was merged into Credit Suisse. And it was a really good experience for me to learn what I didn't want to do. The great news is that I could eat spreadsheets for breakfast now, but it was really my role. I worked in financial institutions group, so I was doing M&A for all the First Union, all these different companies, doing a lot of debt securitizations, IPOs, and it was great because I learned about finance, but I didn't learn about money. And I realized when I had to ask my male coworkers how to invest my 401k that I was starting to contribute to, that I realized, okay, this is not it.
Yeah.
And so I started going to school to get my CFP, fell in love, and that gave me the courage to, go ahead and launch the charity, and then eventually my own wealth management firm. So it's been 21 years for Savvy Ladies, and now about 20 years for Francis Financial.
Wow, fascinating. So, well, there's a lot there. Coming back to your practice, losing a loved one can be very devastating, and all the financial issues that come with that. The passed away scenario you mentioned. Tell us a little bit more about how that business works and what you do with those folks.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, she may come to us. I spoke to a lovely woman. Her funeral for her husband was this week, and he just passed away 7 days ago, leaving her with 3 children
Mhm.
and some life insurance money, but she doesn't know what else she has. So she has about 1.8 million coming in life insurance money that can support her, but she actually doesn't know what he has at work in his retirement plan. She doesn't know what she even has in her retirement plan from when she was working 17 years ago. So we step in and work hand in hand with the trust and estate attorney, who is the first person you should hire, and construct that, that essentially statement of net worth so that you can see where all those assets are. How do they transfer? Do they transfer by title? Do they transfer by beneficiary? Are they in a revocable trust or some other type of trust? And then actually create a flow chart so that she can see how everything is titled, where it will go, and ultimately what it will look like. Because for her, there are so many decisions that have to be made that actually aren't even part of the financials. And so we come in and we try and take the heavy lifting from the financial piece to really show her that. And then once that is really clear, we then meet with the trust and estate attorney with her, and then we actually will start all the transfers. And sometimes it can be very, very time sensitive. If all the money was in a joint account at the bank, and or a account maybe that was even in his name solely, she no longer has access to that once they learn of the death. And so all of a sudden that money is frozen. And how does she have money to pay her bills? And so, making sure that you are getting all the life insurance claims ASAP. Typically they pay out in about a week, which is great. But that's really important. Time is the essence to do that. And then also to start to move those documents, to get the death certificate move those accounts so that she has access to them for her ongoing living expenses. Once we've done that, everything's transferred beautifully, then it's really building out her financial plan. Do you need to downsize? Do you need to go back to work? What does that look like for the kids? Modeling out to age 95, and then also looking at the portfolio. Because I say, could you fit in your husband's pants? Most of us couldn't. I can't fit in my husband's pants. And so you probably need to change the portfolio too, right?
Mhm.
The portfolio that you invested in that was right for you and for your spouse most likely isn't the right portfolio for you now, because your risk tolerance is probably very different,
Mhm.
and we need this portfolio to do some different things for you.
Mhm.
And so it's very time intensive. I would say for any advisor that's listening, the piece that runs across those clients we serve is that the amount of time we're spending is typically 4 times the amount of time you would spend for just your typical couple who's thinking about, retirement or something like that. And so you have to build a practice that allows that, or
Yes.
else your financial advisors will be, burned out, not only from the emotional tax of that, but also just the sheer number of hours working.
That, Stacy, that leads to my next thought was people grieve in very different ways. And if you're involved in that grieving process, with specifically with women, what different ways do you need to communicate to get through to them and go through that 4 times longer process? How do you communicate with them?
So we actually go through very rigorous communication training with grief specialists. That's part of the being certified grief recovery coaches, is understanding little nuances that make a big difference of not how are you doing today, right? How am I
Mhm.
doing? Of course, it's awful, but how are we doing today? When she's crying, not giving her a tissue. Giving her a tissue is telling her, okay, just stop the crying. We don't
Right.
want that. It's fine. The tissue's on the table. If you want one, take one. It's understanding that brain fog, and I see this of widows' brain fog. I also see it of individuals going through divorce. You're not at your best. It's hard to remember. It's hard to stay focused. And so communicating in very clear ways, having shorter meetings, more frequent meetings, and then giving updates of this is what we talked about. These are my next steps. These are your next steps. And then documenting all of that so that you have a record in case she comes back and says, you didn't tell me that. Well, no, we have that. So, again, making sure that's very clear for her. And then also a lot of empathy. Something that's really important. There are some times where, like I said, clients are not their best. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that comes out at anger and frustration. And you happen to just be the person in the way that day. Mm-hmm. And so continuing making sure that our well of patience is as deep as possible. And so how do you do that? It's making sure you're not overworking. It's making sure that you're eating right, that you're, being healthy. And also for us, when we are working with a client, we have to learn how to disconnect after. And so when we are in that situation where we're working with a client, she comes into our bubble and I actually visualize that I have a bubble. She is now in my bubble. And I'm going to experience all the emotions she's feeling. And I may even cry with her, mm-hmm. which is a gift for her to have someone cry with her, a mm-hmm. gift for her to have someone really use her husband's name and talk about him. But when she leaves, and when I say leave, because we actually work online with all of our clients, very few actually come to the office, although we have an office, mm-hmm. then she steps out of the bubble. And then I move on to that next, task or whatever that happens to be. But also having training of being able to be in the bubble and then step out, because in the beginning of my career, I will be honest, Brian, Brian, it was really hard because I had a hard time at the end of the day not bringing that grief and that pain home. And you can't do that. You just can't.
So you have to compartmentalize a bit, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. So, boy, lots of issues here. So how do you develop that trust with them? Is it through the just listening and maybe crying with them and being present, or are there more techniques that you use?
It's definitely all of those, Brian. It's listening. It's being there. What I find is that trust happens over time. I particularly see with women and women going through very difficult traumatic times that the trust can be, the time period to build that trust can be longer. And that's usually because somewhere their trust has been broken. Even if it's not a divorce and he's passed away, there's still a feeling of I've been left. Right. Even if it was a long-term terminal illness, there's just so many emotions around that. So, it really takes some time. And quite frankly, it's the same process that we all need to use with all of our clients, that you say what you're going to do and you be helpful and you, no judgments and just be there wherever she is at that time. It's just, I would say that on steroids is part of what we do.
Well, we're getting a sense of this already, but I thought I'd ask you, how did you develop into being such an industry leader? Was it just creating these companies and forging ahead, or did you find ways to get your message out in different ways across the country?
I appreciate that question. Yeah, we are a little different than your typical RIA, fee-only fiduciary firm. Usually most firms are very location-based, so the majority of their clients are right in their neighborhood. For us, we definitely have a lot of clients out here in the New York tri-state area, but we also have clients all over the United States because we're so specific. They're looking for, instead of the financial advisor that happens to be down the street from them, they're looking for the financial advisor that they really see as understanding their issues.
Hmm.
So one of the biggest challenges I had, Brian, is that I was 27. I moved here from the Midwest, knew no one, had no clients, and hung out my shingle. And I was told, I don't know where I read this, but I read somewhere in an article that you can be the best financial advisor in the world, but you're not going to make a difference unless you actually have clients to help. And so for me, Brian, that was a really a role reversal of how I thought I was going to build my business. And of course, I needed to build my expertise too at the same time. But I started doing a lot of writing. I started doing a lot of speaking
Hmm.
as well as TV. And that helped give me credibility, which I really struggled with because, especially back then, this was, 20 some years ago, I was the age of most of the financial advisors' daughters. And so for me to, have anyone even give me the time of day, I had to do a lot of work to establish myself as a expert and quite frankly to build that expertise too. And so it was not easy. I would speak 50 times a year. I now am in the press, I would say probably 70 times a year. I write for many different publications, Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Forbes, Fortune, Kiplinger. And I was just looking and updating my CV yesterday, and I'll be honest, I know why. I'm a little tired. I've written hundreds of articles, done, thousands of podcasts. I have to say that now it's a lot easier, but in the beginning, right, it was brutal. And I was working like 50 hours a week for Francis Financial, but then another 30 pro bono for the charity through Savvy Ladies to do that
Wow.
too as the executive director. So I was working typically 80 to 90-hour work weeks, which was not any different from my Wall Street days, but it became very difficult when I had kids and I had a maternity leave that was like 3 days. And so that's when I really realized, okay, Stace, we really need to make some more money here, and I need to start to hire staff. So I can have a life to see my children, which again, now I'm very blessed. I have the best planners, the best client service people at Francis Financial, and just a crack, amazing team that runs the charity as the executive director and helpline coordinator. Um, but it took a long time. It took a long time, and quite frankly, my family, um, you know, suffered, and I suffered. I am great, get to be with my kids a lot, but now they're 16 and 13, and they're only going to be home a little bit longer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've almost created an empire uh, of activity, and you're an author as well. Financial Help for Widows. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I've written two books. One is Financial Resources for Widows. It's a complete resource guide, and you can go right to the Francis Financial website. It's right on there. You can download it if you like, and send it to anyone that would be helpful. It's a fantastic, fantastic book that is very, very approachable. And it has stories of women who are sharing their experience as a widow, what they did right, what they wish they had done wrong or done differently. Um, and it also has fantastic tools that you can share with your clients of, you know, how to collect all the documents, how to get a full budget of what's being spent. And then it also breaks out month to month what needs to happen after you have lost your spouse, what documents to collect, when to reach out to Social Security if he or she was a veteran, um, all these pieces. Because one of the biggest things I hear from our clients, particularly right after their spouse has passed away, is being overwhelmed. But being overwhelmed because it's a feeling of like, I have to do this all at once.
Hmm. Right.
Everything has to be done all at once. And actually, that's not the case. There are things that you need to do the first month, the first 2 months, the first 6 months, the first year, but it doesn't have to be all done at once. And then I created another book called Unveiling the Unspoken Truth, Women, Divorce, and Money. And again, stories from women who have gone through the divorce process that are sharing what they did right, what they wish that they had done differently, and then also fantastic resources to make sure that you have 100% knowledge about your finances going into the process so that you can make really smart decisions to come out as financially secure as possible. So we talk about, the taxation of a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA, issues with transferring, restricted stock units that actually, guess what? You actually can't transfer them, and they have to stay in a constructive trust in the employee spouse's name until they actually vest. And then don't forget that the tax impact, right? Because every dollar of a RSU, you're paying state, federal, local, Social Security, Medicare. So just a bunch of pieces. And also what's important in both of them talks about building your team. So who needs to be on your team? What questions to ask when you're interviewing them? And how to know that you have a fantastic professional, whether it's a trust and estate attorney, matrimonial attorney, medical, mental health expert, or a financial.
Stacy, there's so much to it, and you've seen so much. What could the industry do, or what could America do to make this a better situation for the ladies that you work with? Are there any recommendations you'd have, ideas about the future?
So we are slowly moving the needle, but I would say that the needle is being moved at a glacial pace. And I will tell you that we as women are not, are just as much to blame. One of the biggest challenges we see is that women are typically on top of their finances when we are single, but when we become coupled up or married, we take a back seat to finances. And studies have even shown that this is the case even for millennials. We often think it's the older generation that this is the case, but a study came out recently saying that even millennials are less engaged around their money, women, once they get married, less engaged than their baby boomer counterparts. So I think all of us just have to have these conversations, that it's important for everyone to understand money, male, female, they, whoever you are. It is imperative because money gives you options. Money gives you possibilities. And in certain situations, money can give you physical safety. And so all of us deserve that. And I will tell you, if the pandemic hasn't taught us something, if wild inflation hasn't taught us something, if 2022, which is what has been, one of the worst years we've seen since the Great Depression for just a diversified portfolio has taught us, it's taught us that we need to talk about this. We need to learn and we need to be prepared. And we can look to schools, we can look to savvy ladies too, but ultimately, where does that come from? That comes from us, of making that as a decision that we're going to do for ourselves and encouraging the people around us that we love to do the same.
Stacy, our time is short, and I know you've got some other things to do as well. I would say that it would be great if you could share with us what you think your best opportunity is in your leadership role in the industry. What do you see the future looking like for you?
That is a really exciting question. So my goal is for the charity to continue to thrive. We are serving tens of thousands of women each year through Savvy Ladies, but there are millions that need that support. And through Francis Financial, we are only 17, but we are strong and mighty. But my vision for our firm is to become one of the larger RA fee-only wealth management firms in the U.S. We are actually the 11th fastest female-owned, fastest growing female-owned firm in the country last year, which is great. So we're on track with that. And the reason I'm so really focused on that growth to become larger is because it gives career path to my staff members. And I've had staff members that have been with me for decades and decades, and the longevity of my staff members is quite unique. And the reason why they stay is that there's opportunities in career path, and I can't give that unless we're growing. So I feel really focused on doing that for my team members. So we're always looking for good team members, and making sure that it works for their life, that they can work remote, and that they have flexibility. They can be a mom or a dad, and can help take care of their parents if needed, and making sure that the work-life balance that I didn't have when I started the firm, that that no one else feels that.
Great. Well, we could go on for hours in discussing this, and we hope to do it again. But this has been a great window inside taking financial literacy and financial training and planning to just a whole new level with a group of people that really need it. So it looks like more of a vocation than just a business, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is, but I feel like for so many of us in this field, we come to it from caring and wanting to help, and
Yes.
I feel like it is more of a vocation, but I think also a vocation that has a fantastic opportunity for a career. Like I can't imagine having the opportunities I have to have flexibility in my work life, but then also be able to like have a really, really, really good financial reward from that too. And the fact that I can help my family, and that I can give my family opportunities that I've been able to, because this field can be, really financially lucrative. It takes a long time to build that, but I think it's phenomenal to be such a caring field, but yet also can be really financially rewarding.
Really effective. Yes, absolutely. Well, congratulations on all your great success. We're going to be watching you quite often in the future now. And thanks really very much for being with us on the Financial Advisors Workshop. We are able to find some of the most interesting people in America, and we're lucky we found. So thank you, Stacy. We'll leave it there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Brian.
And thanks everybody for being with us for another great episode of the Financial Advisors Workshop. And we'll be back with another great interview for all the great folks nationally at 4-Star. We're now in 13 states with 31 advisors all across the country. And we're learning about great financial advisors all across the country. So for our whole team, we'll leave it there. And thanks everybody for being with us today. Bye-bye for now.